All right, so again, our drawing we're going to do is on page 82, the top letter C is what we're going to do. All right, first off, I want you to look at that drawing. Ignore those two cylinders on the front of it. And what are you going to be drawing? A rectangle or a square back there on that plane. So what plane would I start my sketch on to create this drawing? On your front plane or the XY plane, but that's easier just to remember, call it the front. So the front plane is where you're going to start this drawing. So go ahead and do this with me. You should be able to keep up with this, no problems. All right, front plane, we're going to just draw a rectangle. Get used to using the rectangle command instead of the line. It's just so much quicker. It automatically adds those horizontal and perpendicular constraints in there for you. It makes it nice. From there, go ahead and center this up horizontally and vertically to your origin. And then from there, let's dimension this thing and make it a 3 by 3 block. The one in the book I know is not quite symmetrical, but we're making this one symmetrical. So 3 by 3, that should turn it all black. If you're fully constrained and you're all black like that, go ahead and finish your sketch. And we're going to extrude this. Now, however, when we extrude this, we're going to extrude it a little bit differently. As I've told you in the past, 95% of the time you're going to extrude it both ways. This is one of those 5% of the times that you're not going to extrude it both ways. Because if you look at this block, extruding it both ways really doesn't do any good to make this object centered up because it's not symmetrical from this plate. We're actually building it from this, kind of building it up from this position or out from this position. So it's better to go ahead and extrude it the one direction, this direction, and let's extrude this as a 1/2 inch thick, so 0.5. And go okay. Okay, so from there, looking at this block, this back little plate, is this back little plate done? No, it has some rounded corners on it. However, we don't do the rounded corners yet. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have said, yeah, go ahead and fill out the corners here and get it done here. But it was here a few years ago. I went to a conference, and one of the things that I learned there that helped me a lot with the way I create things in Inventor is they gave you 3 main steps to do when you're creating parts in Inventor. Always start by creating all positive features first. So anything that has mass to it, anything that has volume to it. So for this, it's the rectangle. The next positive feature would be another cylinder, or a cylinder. The next positive feature would be a second cylinder. So first you create all positive features of an object, and then next you go to the negative features. What would be one major negative feature on this object? The hole. So the next step would be to create the negative features, which would be the hole. Then after the hole, or after your negative features, that you put holes and slots and grooves and everything else in your parts, the next step is to do fillets and rounds. So you actually do that as the last step. I'm telling you seriously, not on things that are this simple, but when you get to more complex things, having that in your mind, doing positive features, the negative features, and then fillets and rounds, really actually makes the drawing easier to do and easier to edit in the end. So on this simpler part, not that important, but I want to train you the right way of doing it from the start. So here we go. The next step is to go ahead and go start sketch. I'm going to start the sketch on that front plane. From there, it should give you the crosshair right in the middle of your object. Go ahead and draw a circle. Make sure your little green dot appears there so your circle is constrained to that origin. And pull out your circle. Dimension that circle. And when you dimension it, I think 2.5 looks pretty appropriate. So 2.5, it should be all black. Go ahead and finish your sketch. And extrude that circle at, again, the same 0.5, I think looks just fine. So there you go. There's that next portion of it. Next, we're going to go start sketch again. We're going to go that front face again. We're going to draw a circle again. That circle, go ahead and dimension it. And again, I think on it, 2 inches looks pretty good. So 2 inches. Finish your sketch. Extrude it. And you know what? I think 3 looks pretty decent for that. Oops, I almost went to the wrong thing. 3 inches. And there you go. Okay, so now, we need to put a hole in this. How do you think we could put a hole in this? There is a couple different ways you could do a hole. So one, you could, don't do this, but you could start a sketch on this front plane, draw a circle, extrude it, cut it, and you make a hole. But however, that's really not the proper way to make a hole. To make a hole, what do you think you might use? The hole command. The hole command is a better way of doing it. Now you might say, well, it doesn't matter which way you do it. But it actually does. Using the hole command, you have a lot more options. When you go to and you start doing some 3-view drawings, which we're going to touch on those a little bit here later, holes are definitely pointed out differently in a drawing if you use the hole command or whether you draw them with a circle. The hole command is definitely the way to do a hole. If I see a hole that you've done without the hole command, I'm going to count it off. It'll be wrong. It's not the correct way to do a hole. All right, so we're going to go there and click on the hole command. Hole command has a bunch of stuff on it. Let's look through some of these things. First, up here on the top, that first one is called a simple hole. That's what this one is going to be. Let's look at our next one. Next one's called a clearance hole. That really won't be much different, except for if you would dimension it, it's going to call it out a little bit differently. The next one is called a tapped hole. Anybody, any idea, besides Michael Stonecash, what is a tapped hole? Ah, yes, with threads in it. He was first, sorry. With threads in it. A tapped hole is a hole that has threads in it. Next, that's a special taper tapped hole. You probably won't ever use that. I never have. Next, hey, do we know what that is? Counterbore. We've done counterbores before. Here you can do it all in one step using the counterbore option of the hole command. This is why hole is so much better than drawing circles. Spot face is very similar to counterbore, it's just not as deep. And then you have a countersink, which is an angled hole. Then down below, we have some more options. We have distance. We can put in a distance how deep to make the hole. You can make the hole through all, which is something that you're putting a hole through the whole thing. You want to go through all. Next, we have this one that's to. If you wanted to make a hole to this surface and stop there, you can click that surface and make it to that surface. Next is your direction. So, what we're ready for here now is just to click out here for where your hole goes. I'm going to click off center on purpose so you can see what it does. I'm going to click here. Now notice my hole is definitely not centered. To get it centered, you just click on, if you're putting a hole in a cylindrical object, which I am, you click on the surface of that cylindrical object and notice what it does. It makes it perfectly concentric to the center of that. Okay? Next, you're going to set the size of that hole. And it looks like mine's set from yesterday when I did it yesterday, which is 1 1/4. I think looks pretty good. Make sure you do terminate it through all, not a distance, but go through all, because that'll matter later on a step that we do. And you're going to go okay. All right. Okay, so now we're done with our negative features of this object. Now we're going to go in there and put in our fillets. So we're going to come up here to the top. You should see this thing that says fillet. You're going to select it, and then just click on this line that I want to fillet, which is that corner there. You're going to rotate it around. You're going to do all of them all at the same time. That one there. That one there. And that one there. Now, right now, mine is set to a 0.125 fillet. I want everything in 1/4 inch increment. So let's try and see, what does a 1/4 inch look like? 1/4 inch look good, or do we need to go to a 1/2 inch? Whoops. Whatever number I tried to type did not work. I think the 1/2 looks better. I agree. So set it to a 1/2 inch fillet and go okay. Yeah, AutoCAD, I think, Inventor, I think, is so easy for stuff like this. This part was very quick. Now that you know how to do it, you could redo this part in probably 2 minutes. It's very quick. It's very easy. All right. So for me, the last little tidbit that I always want you to do is I want you to critically look at this thing and say, all right, so how are my proportions? Yeah, not great probably. What do you think about the base, my proportion of the base? I had that at a 1/2 inch thick. Do you think that's appropriate? Now, I think it needs to be a little bit thicker. So again, I like doing this because I like to show you how to go back. What would I go back to change that? Extrusion 1. So double click on extrusion 1 and change that to 0.75. And go okay. And notice what it does for me. It stretches out my fillet and makes it appropriate. Okay? And it just moved everything forward a little bit. So looking at it again critically, what do we think about this next one? I think it needs to go to 0.75 also. So again, go to extrusion 2, double click on it, and let's go ahead and increase it to 0.75. And go OK. All right. Now, I really think it looks pretty good. If you want to be a little bit more nitpicky and change some other things there, still keep it on a 1/4 inch increment. If you wanted to change some other things to make it look a little bit better to you, I'm okay with that. As long as it's similar, I'm not going to count you wrong. And since we did these together, as long as you don't change these back to something weird, I won't count it wrong. But if you wanted to do some other stuff, do this. It's great. Now, one thing I did, and I didn't tell you this, but I did it. When I did this, I made this hole 4 inches deep earlier instead of going through all. Notice what happens if you do something like that and you change other things. Oh. My hole doesn't go through all the way now because I've changed the thickness of this. So that's why I always try to stress to you, always, if your hole's supposed to go all the way through an object, make sure, don't set a distance on it. Make sure, pick that thing that says through all. So when you change the dimension of something, it still goes through it all. All right, that's beautiful. Set it to some pretty material that's not translucent, and I'll be great. Transparent or translucent, actually, and it'll be great. Wow, lead. Lead is pretty boring, but whatever. All right, so there you go.
I chose lead too.
Okay. All right, so when you're all finished, go ahead and save this. All right, focus, guys. Listen. Save this. Save it to your practice folder. You don't need any subfolders on practice drawings. We don't have enough practice drawings. It really doesn't matter that much. Save this to your practice folder as P82-Top-C. 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 Save it there, and you're great.